Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi. Now this is a request that's come in quite a lot over the last couple of years, and that is how to make an Emperor's Royal Guard cape, and it's one that I've been looking into for a while and I finally got around to sorting it out. So more often than not, when you go hunting for Emperor's Royal Guards, you'll find one that looks like this. At some point over the life of this figure, a child has ripped off the outer cape and then ripped off the inner cape, and you're left with a figure that no longer looks like the Emperor's Royal Guard. So what we're going to do today is fix that problem. Now when you get a figure like this, I've shown you in previous videos how to remove the heads, basically just by sort of wobbling it about, so check out that previous video. But a few people have said to me over the years that they when they've tried to do this, they've actually broken the head off, but really that isn't a problem. If you watch other of my videos, you'll know that you can easily reattach the head. So if you have a figure like this that has a broken neck peg, don't worry about that, because I've also shown you how to fix those. So just check out my video on reattaching Darth Vader's head. As you can see, this is a Darth Vader here that I've already worked on, and you can see that the head has been reattached. So you can just use that same fix to reattach the Emperor's Royal Guard head. But the main problem, of course, is the cape. So let's get on to that. The first thing we've got to do is make a pattern for the cape. Now recently I was contacted by Graham Pearce, who was working on some replacement capes. He very kindly took some photos of a cape that he'd taken off an Emperor's Royal Guard, and from those I was able to make a couple of patterns which you can see here. Now these are patterns that I've made which are available from toy-polloi.com. All you've got to do is print them out on some normal paper and cut around them, cutting off the grey edging line that I put on there. That's just a guide to show you how large the capes need to be. And once you've printed those out, stick some sticky backed tape around the edge of them and cut them out. The sticky back tape is there so that we can then stick them onto some fabric and use that as a way of fixing it to the fabric while we cut things out. So you'll get two patterns like this. That's the internal cape and that's the external cape. Now all we need to do is find some fabric. Now the fabric for these old figures is not something you'll find very easily these days. It's a very particular type of velour and they really don't make it anymore. So the easiest option is to go for something that's the right colour and the right sort of texture, but not exactly the same. And if you just go down to any fabric shop, you'll be able to buy some felt. And as you can see here, this is a small sheet of felt. I'll just show you the size of it there. It's about A4 in size, and that costs 55p. It's an incredibly cheap material to buy, and that should do nicely. Now picking the right colour is a little bit of an issue, because as you can see here I have 4 Royal Guards. I've actually got 8 or 9 in my collection. They all are slightly different colours, so I've gone for a sort of burgundy red which matches the darker end of the shades of Royal Guard that I have. I think some of these are a little bit sun faded. As you can see, if I hold it up to that one, there's quite a difference in colour, and again quite a difference in colour to that one. But this sort of burgundy red matches the darker ones that I've got, and I think that's the one we're going to go with. So we can use this to make the capes. Now this sheet of felt should be enough to produce 3 whole sets of capes. It all depends on how you lay out your pattern. So as you can see here, I'm putting them over into one corner, and that should give me enough space to do 2 more if I needed to in the future. And all you've got to do is carefully peel off the sticky back tape that you've stuck onto the pattern. Sometimes this is easier said than done. Let's just peel that off. And then I like to just sort of actually stick this onto my trousers a few times, just to take the stickiness off of the paper a little bit. As you can see, it just gets a little bit of fabric stuck on it, so that it doesn't stick so firmly onto the felt, and makes it easier for removing at the end. So we can just stick that on there like so. And we'll do the same with the inner cape, and then we can cut around those, and then there's a little bit of sewing to do before the capes go onto the figure. So again, just quickly take off all of the double-sided tape. I'm just going to stick that onto my trousers to soften the glue, and then we can stick that here like that. And now we can go about cutting the felt out just with a pair of scissors. I'm just going to roughly cut these out to start with, so that I can then get them into separate pieces and carefully cut around them one at a time. So just cut that one like that. Once you've finished cutting them out, you're left with two bits of cape which are exactly the right size, as you can see here, and they do start to look like the cape on the guard. So now all we've got to do is just to remove the template, and because we've removed some of the stickiness from the tape, it comes off nice and easily. So we can now do the other one as well. We'll sew the under cape first. I've just got some red cotton from Mrs. Toy-Polloi's sewing box here. It's actually a little bit too bright, but she doesn't have a darker shade of red, but I think that should do. It's all going to be hidden inside anyway. On the top of the cape, you'll see that there's two little tabs, and these are the areas that you want to sew together. So we're going to sew this inside out first, and then we can turn it the right way around. So we fold the cape together so that we've got the two tabs sort of lined up, and then take a bit of thread on the needle and carefully thread it through. Now with felt you can very easily pull the cotton through, so we're just going to pull it to the end and then go through again and try and get a little knot going, and that way it should pull quite firmly. That's what I say, felt is not the best material really for doing this, but it's the only one that I could find that has the sort of same colour match and density. I hope in the future I'll be able to find a better fabric match, but often finding fabric that matches these old toys is pretty hard going, so you just have to make do with what you can find. So we're just going to carefully sew along here, and then we can turn this cape inside out and it will look correct. So that's the sewing done, and all we've got to do now is to turn this inside out, because obviously you want the stitching to be on the inside, and then we'll end up with a little skirt with a hoop over the top, and that goes over the neck post. So we can do a test fit on the figure here. Actually you want to put him in feet first through the top, like so, and then you can pull that hoop over the neck post, and you can see that we've got the first part of the Emperor's Royal Guard outfit going on quite nicely. Let's just put the head on and see what that looks like. That's starting to look pretty good. So now we can go on to the top part of the cape, and again, if you see there's two little sort of tab raised bits at the top, so what we're going to do is fold those over, and again we've got to just sew along this edge here, only along that little top bit, because if you look at the original guards they're only sewn just a little bit along the top. And then we can get this cape onto the figure. So let's get that bit sewn. And there we have that bit sewn, so we can turn that inside out again, because you want the stitches to be on the inside, and we have a cape that we hope will fit onto the figure. So let's take his head off again. Now this one has to go sort of to one side of the shoulder. If I bring an original one in here, you can see it's just over his shoulder, so we're going to carefully pop that in place. It's looking pretty good actually. Might rotate that around a bit more just to make sure it's in the right position. Then we can take his head and we'll insert that back on, make sure everything's tucked in. And you can see we've got what looks like a pretty good Emperor's Royal Guard cape. And here we have the finished cape. It's the one in the middle. As you can see, the felt is a little bit too thick. It doesn't hang quite the same as the other capes. But then again, the other capes are sort of 30 years old, so they've had a lot of wear. I think maybe if we put a bit of more wear and sort of crunching into this cape, then it may sit a bit better. It's almost the perfect colour match. It's maybe again a little bit too dark, but that could fade off with a bit of age and a bit of sunshine. But really I'm pretty pleased with how this has come out. It's a fairly cheap and cheerful way of making a cape. As I said before, the felt sheet costs a grand total of 55p, and you can actually make 3 sets of capes out of one sheet, so this cape costs less than 20p to make, and it's pretty nice. It's certainly going to look alright in my Imperial Army setup. I think if you were to look at it too closely, you'd obviously notice that it is a different type of material, but if you have figures like this lying around that don't have capes, then it's a perfectly good way of making a cape. So if you want to have a go at making your own cape, you can get the pattern from toy-polloi.com, and I hope this video has been of interest to you. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching Toy-Polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow Toy-Polloi on Twitter and Facebook.
After filming the main part of this video, I actually happened to go down to a sewing shop and I picked up a better type of cotton. As you can see, this is a more burgundy colour cotton. If I hold it up against the fabric, you can see it's a much better match. I was a little bit underwhelmed by the red cotton that I'd used. You can see there on, this is the one that I made in that video, that it's just a little bit too red and a bit too obvious. So remaking it with the burgundy cotton, you can hardly see the stitching now, and I think that looks a lot better. So really it is quite important to get the right sort of cotton. This cost me about £1.50, so a lot more expensive than the felt itself, but certainly worth having. I'm going to put this back into Mrs. Toy-Polloi's sewing pot, so if I ever need it again, I'll know exactly where to find it. Thanks for watching.